good, Chiefs Kingdom? It's your boy, the real AG here, and you are locked in to Kingdom Keys with yours truly here on the Lockdown Defense Sports Network, where we break down everything red and gold from Arrowhead to hopefully the AFC throne. And the water's getting pretty hot here in the Kingdom. Things are getting very back against the wall, but we're going to get into that, here quickly. But first, a little quick recap, post-game reaction from the Thanksgiving Day game against the Cowboys. As we all know, it was another heartbreaking one-score victory, or loss, I should say, victory for the opposing team. Just a rough Thanksgiving for me and my household. I'm sure a lot of you feel the same sentiments. Just a frustrating game to watch. Again, another close, hard-fought loss in a one-score game. Chiefs are now 1-6 in those settings this year when they were absolutely dominant in that regard, just a year ago. So just frustrating at this point, I guess, is to say the least. There was some positives and some good things, but a lot of the same mistakes or problems with the team just kind of seem to rear their ugly head at the worst possible times in a lot of these games, and that can especially be said on this Thanksgiving one. I mean, first and foremost, we just had a lot of penalties, a lot of issues with discipline, which is not something you would expect from the Chiefs are this Andy Reid-led team that has been on such a dominant run. It's just not what you see from teams with that kind of pedigree. But for whatever reason, we're seeing a lot more, this season. I mean, Kansas City was flagged 10 times against the Cowboys for 119 yards. Several of those were on third downs or late in drives, which just ultimately extended Dallas's possessions or just killed momentum, really. And look, I mean, I disagree with some of them too, but they are what they are. And good teams find ways to not put themselves in those situations. So, you got to address that moving forward because, like I said, it quite literally is do or die time for the Chiefs, for the Kingdom, if they want to right the ship and be where they're supposed to be, through this run that they've been on. But penalties and discipline issues were a huge problem on Thanksgiving Day, as well as just an inconsistent offense. Despite some flashes, like I said, there were some positive things, mainly just Mahomes. I mean, played great. High passer rating, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Usually a stat line that you see from him kind of correlates with winning the game. It just is not happening this year right now. But even with that, they went absolutely cold for a large chunk of the game, didn't score at all in the second or third quarter, and then just crucial decisions made that, I think just in hindsight, maybe should have made a different decision. But, I think of like a crucial series, KC stopped Dallas and got good field position, went for it on 1 4th down scenario, converted, and then, stalled out again, got to 4th and 4 in better field position than when they went for it the last time and they, elected to punt, which I know a lot of people in the household I was watching it at were very, very questionable on that decision. And it just seemed very conservative at a time when I thought the offense and just the team, needed some juice. So, again, just inconsistent offense played a part in the loss. Back to, a broken record at this point, but back to just a lack of a run game, just a one-dimensional offense. Collectively, they rushed for 119 yards, but when you really kind of pull back the curtain and look at it, 30 of those were from Mahomes. One was on a very, third and long, very long scramble that he converted. But you look at Hunt and Pacheco, they combined for 73 yards. I think they collectively had 17 carries. So, what we saw them do a couple weeks ago where they just dominated the run game. Kareem had 31 carries, I believe. They reverted back to sort of abandoning the run at times, which, in turn just makes them predictable. And you can see it in this game against Dallas. Like Dallas was able to key in on the pass in later situations, knew the run wasn't working, and were able to just dial up pressures and disguise coverages, which, Kansas City ultimately struggled to adjust to, especially later in the game. On top of that, from what's been the shining light of Kansas City the past few years, we had some defensive failures in this game, especially on third downs and especially in the pass rush. I mean, as the year as a whole, they haven't been able to produce a whole lot of pressure off the edge and in those passing down situations, which is something they've traditionally been good at. So that's, a little frustrating. But, Dallas was a good offense. They continued to be buzzing in this game. They had 488 total yards, 409 of them passing. So, you can't have that. And again, KC's pass rush was largely ineffective, only had a handful of pressures and hits on deck, no sacks in the game. And ultimately just let Dallas convert at a much higher rate on third down, and they were able to sustain drives when it mattered most. And then, to finally put a bow on this, if you will, they just had missed opportunities at the end of the game and just, failure to capitalize late. Like we're talking about late in the fourth quarter, Mahomes threw a touchdown, cut the deficit to 3, and then Dallas was able to just run a very clock-consuming drive, and KC never got the ball back, which is just not a narrative we usually see in these types of situations, or maybe we do this year, but in the past we don't. And it's just frustrating, man. It's just frustrating to continue to watch the same problems week in and week out. And sometimes they, correct them for 1 week and just go back to forgot what they planned and what was successful and just go back to their ways. And it's clearly not working at times with where we're at in the state of the KC kingdom right now. But you just look at that from the defensive perspective, and then just like I said, those earlier conservative decisions like the fourth down punt, ultimately I think deprived Kansas City of potential momentum or a more comfortable buffer when they got later in the game. But it is what it is. We are washing our hands with Thanksgiving, with week 13, and we're moving on to what's ahead week 14. But first, we're going to do a little quick recap on the injury report because unfortunately there were some pretty big names and big pieces to the Chiefs, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that went down in that Dallas game. As you see here, we had all-pro, one of the best guards in the league, Trey Smith, didn't play against Dallas with that ankle injury and is still listed as questionable. All these guys are questionable for week 14 coming up, but we had Trey Smith was already out. And then in that Dallas game, you had Jawan Taylor go down with a triceps injury. Josh Simmons, the promising rookie left tackle, he went down with a wrist injury, was seen in a brace after the game. Noah Gray suffered a concussion. Xavier Worthy's been kind of consistently dealing with this ankle injury that, maybe is hindering his ability. Maybe we just got to start questioning what he actually brings to the offense at this point, but he's banged up. And then Brian Cook, the safety, had his own ankle injury against Dallas. Like I said, all these guys are questionable for week 14. There's also an updated one. We have corner Chris Roland Wallace, also questionable for week 14. So certainly banged up. More cause for concern, really banged up in the offensive line, which is just not what you want to see for an offensive unit that struggles at times and really needs to start scoring, just given with how the defense has been playing lately. And, with the matchup we're about to review, not good as well. So segueing into that, what's ahead, the upcoming matchup, we have a week 14 showdown against the Houston Texans, Sunday night football in Arrowhead. Chiefs are still 3.5-point favorites at home. I think the big saving grace here is that it is at home. Kansas City's 5-1 in Arrowhead this year. Only loss is that close game in week 3, I believe, early on to the Eagles. Other than that, they've been pretty good at home, which is pretty traditional for the Chiefs. But when you couple that with them 1-5 on the road, that is 100% the saving grace. But they are facing off against, somewhat red hot Houston Texans and their absolutely stout defensive unit. Houston's coming off of 4 straight wins. Some of them you can kind of bat your eyes at, but they did beat Buffalo, also beat Jacksonville, Tennessee, and the Colts. Just quickly looking at kind of their injury status going into this game. They're pretty healthy. I won't say unfortunately, but They don't have a lot of big key pieces with a Q next to their name right now. You're looking at Jamal Hill, a linebacker. He's questionable with a hamstring injury, and safety Jalen Reed, not to be confused with the wide receiver in Green Bay, but he's doubtful with a forearm injury. So, like I said, they're not very banged up with a very stout, very healthy, very opportunistic defense coming into Arrowhead for Sunday night. So, what does Kansas City need to do to prevail in this game? And quite frankly, they have to win out. They got 5 games left. They can't afford to lose any more games without help from other people. So they quite literally have their destiny in their hands for how this season will end. I mean, they will need a little bit of help to probably make the playoffs, but they're not mathematically out of it. And if they can buckle down and stand on business and win out here, like I think they can, they could get in as a wild card team and make noise. Because I mean, quite frankly, that's what they've been doing for the past almost 10 years now. But getting into my kingdom keys for Week 14. I mean, first and foremost, Kansas City is going to need to have sustained success on those intermediate passes. I mean, their strength in this game lies in the intermediate passing game. These vets like Kelsey, Rashee Rice have had a pretty solid season so far, catching high percentage throws and making big plays after the catch, getting a lot of yak. They're going to need to do plenty of that this week, which will help them avoid those long third and distance situations that you just absolutely do not want to be in against a pass rush and secondary like Houston. Somewhat playing into that, they're going to need to stay ahead on third downs. Like I talked about in that Dallas game, they were unable to do that at times, especially in big moments. They're going to they must be better at converting third downs in this game. They got to keep the offense on the field more, give the defense a little rest at times and not really, put the game in the defense's hands late. Those two things go hand in hand, but they're absolutely must do that against a defense like Houston's. On the defensive side of the ball, they have to generate a stronger pass rush. Like they just have to in this game. They got to pressure Stroud, someone who's been inconsistent at times this year. Some of those wins that I just talked about for Houston were with Davis Mills. Stroud came back last week. It was a little so-so, in my opinion, against the Colts. So I think if they can generate a stronger pass rush and pressure him, that just opens up more opportunities for the defense, for field position, for points on the board. And just looking at Houston, their offensive rhythm for the most part is built around a solid protection scheme. But we've seen at times, they're pretty vulnerable just due to their offensive line and bad pass pro. So, when they're under pressure, Stroud makes mistakes. His success rate rapidly declines, or the offense's success rate rapidly declines at sustaining drives. So, they just, quite frankly, they can't do what they did against Dallas and barely pressure the QB and just let him sit back there and pick them apart. They have to disrupt the timing and get some heat on Stroud and just throw off their offense. And like I said, open up more opportunities and hopefully force mistakes, sacks, hurried throws, turnovers of the like. Back to my John Madden key every week. Got to avoid turnovers. They've been pretty solid at that lately, but they absolutely must do. This has to be a turnover-free game, in my opinion. Houston is one of the league's top takeaway units. They thrive on forcing turnovers and turning them into points. Just go watch their game against Buffalo. So ball security is absolutely huge in this game. Somewhat playing into that, they cannot be gifting short fields or just plus field position to the Texans offense, because if Houston gets a gift, like I said, they often turn it into points. So you just absolutely cannot do that. And maybe this needs to be priority one, even though it's stuff down here at the bottom. But they got to stay disciplined in this game. They must avoid those self-inflicted mistakes like penalties. Like I just talked about that Dallas game and other games this season, KC has been flagged for costly penalties lately. Limiting mistakes like that matters, especially in this game. And, what I think is going to be a pretty tight, low turnover game. The penalties ultimately just stall drives, give great field position, or just keep the defense on the field. And with what I think will be both defenses playing pretty tough, this game is going to come down to a few critical plays, possessions, are just bonehead mistakes. So, um, they got to be disciplined. It's going to make a difference. We just can't see them have the type of penalties like they did against Dallas, because if you do, it's probably going to be over quickly. As much as I want to have faith in my squad, and then again, this broken record here, but they got to lean more on a balanced offensive attack. You cannot depend solely on the pass like they've done at times, a lot of times. So, looking at defense, Houston's defensive strengths, you got to have a balanced attack. They got to mix in runs, short passes, screen game, and play action just to help keep Houston off balance and throw off what they like to do from a pressure standpoint defensively. They need to use a variety of personnel to sustain drives, convert third downs, and unfortunately, I think give a little bit more protection for Mahomes. Mahomes is going to need to trust that protection and stay in the pocket and just go through his reads and just sling the ball around, or hand it to Kareem or Pacheco and let them do some damage. Because what could go wrong if they don't do some of these keys? If you just look at if Houston's pass rush gets going with Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, and the likes of that, and gets home with pressure, Casey is going to struggle offensively, unfortunately. And, that's especially concerning just given the state of the offensive line. You saw how banged up the O-line is right now, and just the cohesion going in this game. I think one turnover is going to shift momentum badly in this game. And if Casey does that or just cannot convert our third downs or stalls like they did against Dallas, it's likely over. But, till the fat lady sings and the Chiefs are mathematically eliminated from playoffs, I am always going to have faith in them, because if you look at the resume of Patrick Mahomes, if you look at the resume of Andy Reid when they're wearing red and gold, how can you not have faith in them? So as you see from my prediction, I got this being a tight game, maybe in honor of the Chargers and Eagles playing in Monstropolis. We got a 23-19 here. I got the Chiefs winning 23-19 over the Texans in Arrowhead, and what I think is going to be a very close, very tight game. But like I said, man, it is do or die time for Kansas City right now. So I feel like I've said it a few times, but we're going to find out what this team can be. Can they overcome some of these shortcomings and get back on track, get into the playoffs and make some noise? Or are they going to just kind of sit on their laurels, do the same stuff they've been doing, make the same mistakes, and get themselves booted and kind of have to go back to the drawing board instead of taking this run it back approach? We're going to find out after Sunday night. That's for damn sure. But, that wraps up the Kingdom Keys with yours truly, the real AG, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you like this content and want to get at me, there's my social media info right there in the middle as the in-house Chiefs insider. If you want to get at some of the other members of the Hit Squad, we got Mike Dubb, our Commanders insider. There's his info. And Young RG with the Chargers. If you want to get at them, there's his info. If you like this content and want to find more, there's anywhere and everywhere you can get Lockdown Defense Sports content. And as always, with this video, please hit that like button down below. Chiefs Kingdom, our Chiefs haters, get in those comments. Let me know how you feel about this game, playoff hopes. If you think I missed something that's a glaring issue with the team right now or with just this matchup, I want to hear from you. And please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other Kingdom Keys or content that we're dropping each and every day on the channel. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm the real AG. This is the Lockdown Defense Sports Network. We're locked in the Kingdom. And how about those Chiefs, baby?